This is Women in Linux. Welcome to the Women in Linux podcast, exposing women to information and careers in technology.
Thanks for joining Women in Linux with your hosts Tamika Reed and Dee Parler. This installment of our CTO series, we're chatting with Yvette Pasqua, CTO of Meetup. So Yvette, again, we're excited to have you here. I know Tamika was really, with all her background noise, was very, very excited when she's like, I got Meetup. So we're thrilled. We're really, really thrilled. So our first question for you is just a little introduction about who you are and a little bit of background.
Sure. Yeah, great. So great to speak with the two of you. I'm excited to be able to talk and share my ideas on this podcast. Yeah, I'm Yvette. I'm the CTO of Meetup. I've been the CTO for about a year, and one of the biggest reasons I joined Meetup was really because Meetup's a mission-driven organization, and I was really excited about the mission and really excited to work for such a strong mission-driven organization. Our mission is to do all we can, work as hard as we can, ship as much product as we can, so that people can meet up everywhere about most everything. And I, since I've joined, I've really seen that getting people together in real life to do things they love together, to talk, is one of the greatest contributions that we as a software platform can give the world. We help people do things they love, help people do what really matters to them, and help people talk and do things with one another that they might not otherwise without the connections we can foster in our platform. And especially, with recent events with the election, I really feel that mission more than ever before. And that's all I've been thinking about these days.
And that's a great segue for a question that I had. Do you guys internally use meetup.com for yourselves?
Oh, yeah. We certainly do. Yeah, that's how we organize here at Meetup. We have internal Meetup groups that we use. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Because I was just wondering, I was like, would you use that, or would you use something else, or would you?
We do. So before Meetup, a little more background. Before Meetup, I worked at WPP agencies for about 10 years and worked with many, Fortune 50 to Fortune 500 and a few startup in the mix companies. Was someone trying to help these companies achieve their business goals through technology. And before that, before and after that, I worked at a couple of different software product companies as well. Okay.
And so with that being said, the skill sets that you obtained out of those companies, I hear some programming and I hear some leadership, but what else did you have, coming in to be a CTO? Because we're talking, some people do it overnight. Some people, when I say overnight to me is 5 years, and then some people do it over a span of 10 years. But you acquire skills as you go, and some skills you lose. And some skills you do lose, because some jobs you can't really utilize those skills. You maybe use some of them, but not all of them. So what skill sets do you think that you acquired since becoming the CTO that you didn't have before?
I've always been an engineer at heart, but to be perfectly honest, I was rarely the best engineer in a room of engineers. I started managing the tech side of projects pretty early on in my career, so managing engineers and managing teams towards building things. And then I started managing other engineers as a people manager as well, and I realized I loved those things and was good at it. So that was kind of the start of leadership, I guess, for me. I definitely think another key for me, at least, is my background and having so much experience trying to solve a large variety of business problems for so many different types of software product companies and other companies with so many clients and really being able to listen to stakeholders from all different departments at those companies many areas of the business, whether it's engineers, other CEOs, CMOs, C-level execs, strategists, product people, designers, and have a lot of, have had to time and time again develop technical strategies that really help the company, whatever that company is, hit their most important project and strategy goals. And I definitely think that is at the core of what a CTO should be doing at a company. And I think over time, I was fortunate enough to be asked to do that in my background and to have learned mostly by failure, but also by some successes.
And that's a good thought there that I have is, like, did you have some type of mentor or some type of book? Did you take some type of class in order to kind of fine-tune your leadership ability and working with groups and different attitudes altogether and different approaches when it comes to working in groups, not necessarily in leadership, but just in groups in general? And, sometimes somebody develops into a leader out of a group or something of that nature. But did you have any type of mentor or any type of book or training you followed?
Yeah, so I actually, I think mentoring was much bigger for me. I haven't taken, other than some programming classes since college, I haven't taken any classes, or I'm not a huge believer or fan in reading books about how to do your job well. I personally have learned by just watching others and trying things and learning as fast as I can from my mistakes. But I definitely had several mentors. One of my bosses was a CTO at two different companies I worked at, was a huge mentor for me. The president of that one of the same companies I worked at, I was very accessible to me, and I was able to observe him as well. I worked for an amazing CFO there as well, and again, really accessible people at the C-level who I reported into. And I was able to learn so much from her, coming from a totally different side of the business world and running the actual business as the CFO. And I think because they were so accessible and I could learn so much from them, I feel like I learned how to be a complete leader and manager in a way from doing that. I feel like I was able to learn a really diverse set of skills that I needed to do that. Things like I learned how to run my own P&L for the first time. I learned how to really listen to people and learn what motivates them so I could empower them to do their best work. I learned how to, and the benefit of trying to do and to motivate teams to do really hard things that no one thought that could really be done, but not to be afraid to do that and not be afraid to fail, and to make sure the teams weren't afraid to fail either. I learned from one of those folks that sometimes recruiting is the absolutely most important thing a tech leader can do. And from him telling me, hey, it's the most important thing you can do. And he told me that probably 12 times every weekly check-in that we had for a while, right? But honestly, I learned more from anything from watching them, watching how they made themselves accessible to me, and they were so direct and consistent with their message and feedback, and just watching them in meetings and watching them in communications. It was almost, I feel like I learned more from being able to watch them than necessarily the feedback that they gave me. I kind of equate it to, I have a 3-year-old daughter. I kind of equate it to, kind of doesn't matter what I tell my 3-year-old to do. She's just going to say no anyway. But I sure know that I can tell, right? Like I know that whatever I actually do in front of her, she's going to mimic that the next day or the next week, or for a lot of her young life. So I kind of feel like it's kind of similar with the with the mentoring by showing and not telling might be even more effective.
So true. I agree. So true. So are you mentoring anyone now?
So I'm trying to mentor as many people as I can at Meetup right now. by honestly doing the same things that my mentors, who I learned the most from, did, right? So making myself very, very accessible to not only the engineering team at Meetup, but other directors and, rising stars and leaders at Meetup. But by, empowering them and bringing them into the right kinds of meetings and decision-making sessions and brainstorm sessions and getting those folks to run more and more of the company. So, these days my focus is really on Meetup because I truly do believe that I personally will have the greatest positive impact on people's lives, other people's lives that I can if Meetup is successful. That's how I feel like I personally can make the most difference in the world. But, to be honest, I also think it's important for me to mentor and speak with people outside Meetup as much as humanly possible too. So I try to meet people for coffee, for help whenever I can. And, this might be somewhat controversial, but I specifically always say yes to meetings from people who are in underrepresented groups in tech. So women, people of color, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The way I kind of like decide to say yes or no, if you're an underrepresented group in tech, I view it as one of my jobs to try to equalize access to tech as much as possible. So I say yes to those things, and everything else is lower on the totem pole. And I decide, will it help Meetup's mission? Will it help bring equal access to tech? And if it's not going to do either of those two things, what significance is it for me? So I really am trying to provide as much mentorship and advice with those questions in mind.
Yeah, very intentional mentorship is what I hear. Like,
sure, yeah.
And we definitely appreciate it. Women in Linux, of course, we've started on Meetup, and me and Tamika, we always sit and crack up over our wine and just like, remember when it was just me and you?
Yeah.
Patiently and, just being there and waiting for your group to kind of build. You do your things outside of that. But one thing that I appreciate about the Meetup platform is that it gives you a space that if other people are looking for what you guys offer, they'll find you.
Hopefully, if we're building our product right, we could always be making that better. But that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I always preach to people in general, and it doesn't matter about color. I preach you have to make yourself so uncomfortable when you get in a space. Like, stop going to spaces where you're comfortable. Get uncomfortable in a space. Once you get uncomfortable and you find yourself uncomfortable, you'll start seeing other things that you've never seen, and you'll challenge yourself.
Yep, totally agree.
So don't go to the same meetup where everyone. Go to a different meetup, meet a different person. I don't care if it's beading, I don't care if it's Docker, I don't care if it's sculpting, but go somewhere where you haven't done something before. And be uncomfortable, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know what skill you're going to acquire, and you may just like it.
I couldn't agree more. And we see that every day with customer feedback on our platform. And I personally take it a step further whenever I can. Again, I've tried to be really intentional with how I can personally equalize access in tech, because I've seen that, be a problem myself firsthand. And when I go to meetups, this is kind of weird and pretty strange, but I make a conscious decision to, if I'm going to go up to someone and start talking with them, which, by the way, is sometimes hard and awkward, but I try to do it as much as I can. Now, I would never not have a conversation with someone who wanted to talk with me, but if I'm going to pick someone in the room to go talk with, I'll pick a person of color or a woman at a tech meetup, or, a dude at a women's meetup or something, or some other underrepresented group that if I just let the numbers game play, I would probably never get a chance to talk with them. So I intentionally try to expand my network with people that if I didn't do the work of doing that, I unfortunately wouldn't meet.
Right. And that's to me, that's like forcing yourself to be uncomfortable. And I don't really want to say the word force, but it's like step out your shoes.
I feel like it's training a muscle for yourself to be uncomfortable. That's how we met. You and I met because we started talking to each other randomly outside a conference session that we were trying to listen to, right? And I think if neither of us were both the kind of people trying to do that, we probably wouldn't have even said hi to each other and started talking. So I feel very fortunate when that happens.
Right. And then, too, we met at is it Women Tech Makers, Google's Entrepreneurs? I don't know the acronym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know they're going to kill me for saying this on this podcast, but I forget the acronym. But we also met there, too, but we hadn't met in person. And, it's like, okay, I told you, I was like, I'm going to be there as best I can, and I'm going to sit in the front row. Like, that's just what I do. I'm going to sit in the front row. I'm going to ask a question. That's just what I do because I have questions. And hence why we're here on the podcast, because I have questions. And so with those questions, and even making yourself uncomfortable, and I hope that, as you continue on your journey to challenge the status quo, that you're taking people along with you to do that so they can see that, so they can mimic, like your 3-year-old, they can mimic you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sometimes some things don't sink in until you've done it a couple of times. So I hope that's something that you do, or if you haven't done, you would do yourself as well, to just try to bring somebody along, because that's how me and her met. Me and Dion, I challenged her like, hey, why don't you learn Linux? And she was like, Linux, what is that? What do you do with that? And so I challenged her to learn it. Now, she did fall off, but that's neither here nor there. She tried.
She just called me up. Well, this is one thing that I appreciate about our group, Women in Linux, and our experience helped shape who Women in Linux, our mission is. And that was being exposed to a lot of different things before you fully immerse yourself into something that you're really not passionate about. And I found out that even though I love Linux and Linux is enterprise software and it runs the world and all this other good stuff, I just felt for me that system administration was not my thing. And it was okay. However, I have these fundamental skills and that I understand. So before, when I walked into rooms in different meetups where all I heard was womp, 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 now I go and I can understand it and I can talk about technology and software and things that make me passionate within the space. So, I didn't fall off. I made pivot.
Look, I knew that was going to motivate her for a speech.
You're listening to Women in Linux.
So when architecting the future at meetup.com, how do you come up with the latest trends, or what are you looking at or studying to say that this is the direction we should be going?
Well, I mean, this is going to sound self-promoting, but it's true. But I go to a lot of meetups, right? So while that may be biased, we work with many larger organizations now through our Meetup Pro product, and they've done internal surveys, and we've seen it time and time again over 15 years of feedback that evidence shows that meetups are one of the most accessible and best ways to learn and stay up to date in tech. So I go to a lot of meetups, but as much as I go to meetups, I read a lot more. I read a ton and encourage my team to read a lot and share that as a team. So every morning, every evening, I'm reading what other companies are doing. I've also brought in, since I started about a year ago, I've brought in 30 to 40 people from companies outside of Meetup to do informal Q&A, fireside chat type things to really learn what they're doing and some of their best practices that they may be known for in the industry. So learning from others as much as possible. And I honestly rely on my senior engineers to drive architecture decisions. I have a team of principal engineers, I have a team of directors, and I have a team of product engineering leads who lead up our product teams. And ultimately, they are responsible for leading architecture decisions with their teams. Now, of course, I weigh in, and there's always some debate about things, but it's very, one of our company values at Meetup is debate and decide, right? So everyone debates and aligns, decides, and moves forward. And I'm one other voice in that. But I rely a lot on my senior engineering leadership team to do a lot of the day-to-day architecting of Meetup's future. And I look at myself as someone who does a couple of things as a CTO, tying all those great ideas together into a consistent roadmap and strategy, right? And making sure those things are always aligning with the business objectives and product strategy objectives. And then being one of the leaders of the engineering organization to communicate out those things in a clear, easy to understand way for the whole company to understand.
Cool. And that sounds like what you're doing there is kind of part of your motivation for your team, for I guess, and I guess and team building as well too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And I think you're asking about is that tied to motivation by empowering, I think, those engineers. And I think, that is a huge thing to keep teams motivated. I think the biggest thing for to help with motivation is, as a leader, helping the entire company align on mission and product strategy. Being able to do that and communicate that effectively really allows the teams to be empowered to develop their own team roadmaps and metrics and results they need to hit. And, they also, if they end up doing that, they know, and they really believe that they will have a big impact on the overall mission, right? So align on mission, align on product strategy, allow the teams to be empowered to develop all the important things and all the metrics they want to hit to get there. They already then realize the big impact that their team will have on that product strategy and mission. And it gives both the team and individuals what I think is at the core of motivation, which is a sense of purpose, right? So try to get a sense of purpose is hard. I think a lot of work goes into trying to make everyone feel a sense of purpose. And I think I personally have a lot of work to do to get there, and so does Meetup. But I think we're doing an okay job at that now. And I think, to do a great job at that, it's just constant work. But I think that's how, I think you get motivation through a sense of purpose. And I think those are the steps to get there.
Right. And make, the sense of purpose is one thing, and then maintaining that ride, that high throughout that purpose is another thing. I'm going to get you on this train, but we may not have enough fuel or coal to get to the end, and keeping that going, keeping that train going. And sometimes it doesn't have to come from you. It can come from someone else within the group or someone else on the outside looking in. Sometimes it takes, maybe somebody outside the group to kind of propel that particular group forward, or maybe a person in the group. You never know. One person could bring down a whole group, but you have to know how to bounce back or gather the troops, as they like to say. And I really don't want to use that analogy, but gather your people to make sure that, they come back full circle back to what the actual mission is.
Right? Yeah. I think that's really, really important. And I definitely view the role of a leader to keep that, if you have a sense of purpose and you have the motivation, there are then blockers that get in your way, and demotivate you, right? Even though you have that sense of purpose. So I view leadership as removing all those blockers for teams and individuals, so they run into as few of them as possible, and that sense of purpose can really keep them fueled, the whole way. And those blockers could be administrative things. Those blockers could be more philosophical things, right? Those blockers could be how the team's working and process and the tools they're using. The blockers could be talent and resourcing. The blockers could be overcoming hard technical architecture decisions. But, whatever those blockers are, helping identify those with individuals and teams as quickly as possible. And as a leader, like getting them past those blockers and making them realize there are really no blockers. There's just problems to solve together. And I think that, like you said, that keeps the train running.
And then it goes back, I think it goes back to what one of your mentors says, is hiring the right people for the team. Because I know when it comes to the team, teamwork makes the dream work. And when you're surrounded by a certain type of energy, even if you're going through ups and downs, your highs and lows, you always have somebody to lean on and go through the trenches with, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely agree.
So now that you're in tech and you've been in it for a while, is there anything else that you would have liked to done outside of tech? Like, do you have anything that you was like, hey, I want to go build a missile for NASA, or I want to be an astronaut?
That's a great question that I haven't thought much about. It's kind of ironic you bring up. I did go to space camp as a kid, so I did love the idea of going to space. But honestly, I just started at Meetup a year ago, and this is the dream job for me now. I haven't thought much else, but I think. So I also do think, yes, I would want to stay in the same field. I find technology and software product development to be the thing that is most exciting. I think I happen to be extremely fortunate that at least right now and in the past 15 years or so, there's been a huge growth, and it's been a fortunately great industry to be in. So that's always really nice. But if someone dropped X million dollars in my lap and said, don't worry about making ends meet and helping your family, and I could just volunteer all my time, I think I would probably teach kids about software and computers in public schools that couldn't afford it. I used to be a camp counselor. And I thought for a hot second about becoming a teacher out of college. But I love being around kids, and I love teaching. And I went to public school my whole life until college, and I'm a big fan of public school. And I truly believe that teaching kids about software engineering and computers in schools that couldn't otherwise afford it, could really have a big impact on their individual lives and the success of their local communities, and then the success, I guess, of their states and countries. So that would be kind of a cool thing to do, I think.
Right. You have to think about all the kids, all of the future billion-dollar companies that we're missing out on. Because the kid doesn't have, and I call it access versus exposure.
Totally.
Access, you have access to the world, but then you're not exposed to what it actually means when you're doing that. Yep. So I call that access versus exposure. And with that, and you mentioned college, if you had a chance to mentor a freshman, say a high school person transitioning in, or a 2-year college, freshman, junior, in college right now, female, and she wants to go into tech. Yep. And she is, because we know some fields are just obscure. when you start talking about somebody wants to be a solutions architect, or somebody wants to be a site reliability engineer, or they want to be a storage admin. Like, those things are so obscure. What would you tell a person in school right now who's taking comp sci or computer engineer or electrical engineer, that these positions that you should focus on X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. I mean, that's the question, right? And you know, to be honest, I don't have a CS degree, right? I have a degree in biology with a mixture of neuroscience and psychology thrown in there. But I would definitely recommend to people now, if you want to get into software engineering, it's going to be much easier if you have a CS degree. So like you said, that's just the reality of it. And it's a great place to start. And if that excites someone enough, like, definitely do that. But, you know, I would want to leave the door open for people. You know, I speak with a lot of people who don't have CS degrees. And you know, I would hire those people if they're great too. I really think the key though is you know, getting the exposure, right? Whether it's through part-time jobs or internships. You know, I had my first job that was in tech was at the university I went to, I think sophomore year, one of those, maybe end of freshman, beginning of sophomore year. I got a job installing networking hardware and software at the medical school. So I'd go into doctors and hospital offices and with my floppy disk and, you know, get them hooked up. It was all modems and 10BASE-T Ethernet cables and connections back then, but I'd literally like get them on the internet. And that was my first job in tech. And it was a paying part-time job, and I had no experience, but I played around with computers enough to figure it out. Yeah. So I definitely think, you know, part-time jobs, internships in college, because I really think those kinds of things teach you more about the practical application of your college education. So having a CS degree is an excellent foundation, but being able to apply that, you know, really knowing how to carry yourself in the professional world, knowing how to work well on teams, I think is so important, especially for entry-level jobs. Something that's so impressive for me and my team who hires people is someone who, you know, like a lot of candidates have solid computer science fundamentals, but what's even more impressive for us is when we find someone who seems like they're professionally mature and they can really step in and communicate well with others and work well on a team right away. You know, it's really a lot about communication, a team first attitude versus a me first attitude. It's a lot about, you know, judgment and having learned from failures in the past and being able to make, you know, good, even if they're very small scale at an entry level job, right? But good judgment decisions, maybe how to build something or how to approach a problem, or even how long you try to figure something out before you ask someone for help, right? So I really am a huge believer in people putting themselves into as many learning experiences as one can during college, again, through like jobs, internships, volunteering, you know, playing sports, you know, being in an orchestra, like whatever it is where you have to work with other people and towards a common goal and, you know, learn something new. And I really think it helped me a ton in my career. So I definitely encourage folks who are just starting out to do as many of those things as possible.
And do you guys offer any type of mentorship or volunteer work that someone could do if they wanted to? Say you guys are working on not necessarily a project internal, but like maybe a made-up project outside to trying to get ingrained in the community. Do you guys have any type of program or volunteer program such as that, where someone could do that?
We don't. You know, in a way, our whole business runs around a bunch of volunteers, right? So Meetup's business model is Meetup is free unless you want to start your own meetup group. And then we ask you to pay us a monthly subscription fee. But very few, and this, we believe this will change. Very few people are making their entire living from running meetup groups. There are plenty of people who actually make their whole entire living from running meetup groups, but not nearly enough, right? So essentially, most organizers now who run meetup groups, they're all volunteers, right? So we have a lot of best practices around that, and we try to support them the best we can. But we could certainly be doing better on that front. We have internship programs at Meetup. We have this year we're bringing back our Women in Tech internship program. We're specifically looking for the most passionate, best, brightest women engineers to come work with us for the summer. It's a program that we ran 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and we have people here who were interns and they're still engineers here after working for the summer, and it just worked really well for us. So we're bringing it back after a hiatus last year.
It's funny that you mentioned that, where most people who run meetups volunteer. And that was one of my Ignite talks. That was why I was there at Philosophy Conf.
Oh, cool.
My Ignite talk was, I think employers should fund the meetups. Mm-hmm. And I think the schools should require the students attend the meetups, because those are the people that are teaching what's happening right now in the industry. And the stuff that you're learning at school is a great platform, but it would be awesome if the students could attend a meetup so they can understand and make connections, number one, and then understand what's actually happening out in the field. And then so when you go back to school and you're learning this concept, you're like, oh, that's what that means. Okay, I can understand that now. Because now you can kind of bridge that gap. And, they're always talking about there's not enough women or not enough women of color or not enough color or whatever. But that help bridge that gap. That cuts out, whether or not you're looking for someone who has the skill set. You could already see them. They're tangible. You can touch them. And we
see that time and time again, too, that just, having meetups and getting people together really starts bridging those gaps right away.
Right. And that was my talk. That was my Ignite talk, my 5-minute Ignite talk. And then I wanted to expand on that, on how you can make that actually happen. Because, the meetup group, the OpenStack meetup group is the largest. I think they got 6,000 people, and they record their meetups. But there's no reason why the person who sits in New York can't watch that recorded meetup and actually engage with those people there.
And there's no reason they can't use that as a template, right? Use the OpenStack group and say, what, I'm opening OpenStack New York, or better yet, I'm opening OpenStack Kansas, or, Miami, or Austin, or, Portland, Maine, or you name the town, and, bringing something that works and people are getting a lot of value, bringing that to their local community. And that's one thing that we think as a platform we could be doing better and making easier for people at Meetup, and have some ideas about how to add features to our product to make that happen.
Right. And we have came to our end of our questioning, and here is your chance to do your shameless plug or anything that you want to. You can shout out your daughter.
Sure. Well, my daughter's awesome, but she knows that. But I think the biggest thing for me is just I would love to hear from more people who want to potentially work at Meetup. Right? We're always looking for great talent. I'm specifically looking for women and other people in other underrepresented groups to join our team. Although, we're doing better than averages in most cases with diversity on our team. We've established some aggressive metrics we want to hit by 2020, and we're doing whatever we can to meet them these days. So I just, love to hear from your community more. Specifically, we're looking for an engineering manager who is either a woman or person of color or other member of an underrepresented group. And we're not going to hire someone till we find someone, right? So we're making intentional, conscious decisions around that. I mentioned we have a Women in Tech internship program for this summer. And we're looking for back-end engineers, data engineers, web engineers, iOS engineers, and you can find all this on our site, meetup.com, and go to the jobs area. And our recruiters are fantastic. They're leading the inclusion and diversity efforts, and have taught me so many things on how I could be doing that better. So that's my shameless plug.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity for it.
You're welcome, and we appreciate you. And I'll make sure that, I look at your engineering manager position, and I'll make sure I spread the word as well, too, in my group. I also posted your internship that you just posted. I also posted it out. Well, I'll make sure that gets out in our newsletter as well too for people to see that that may not be in our Slack group, but they're actually on our newsletter and on our Facebook. Like we'll make sure we get that information out there. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you for taking the time and working with us today and to do this interview. Dee, is there anything you want to add or say?
Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you both. Yeah, thank you both so much. It's really great speaking with you, and awesome to meet you both, and hope we keep talking. Sounds great.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Women in Linux podcast. Women in Linux is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization created to get women involved in the field of IT using Linux as a foundation. You can connect with Women in Linux through social media at Women in Linux on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To join weekly meetups, go to meetups.com/Women in Linux. For more information and to connect with Women in Linux, go to www.womeninlinux.com.